So, yeah, so this is the last section that we have for today. So I'm Zach, and we're going to be talking about servers and NodeJS. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give like a brief review of servers, kind of how they work. I'm going to talk about what NodeJS is and how that's going to help us build our servers, and then we're going to go through a small, very miniature workshop type thing to kind of show how we can actually make a server and kind of how it works and stuff like that. And then tomorrow we'll kind of work on improving that, and we'll kind of finish up a lot of the stuff that we'll kind of fully kind of fledge out Catbook, and we'll have all the pieces come together. So we're going to recap servers. So I guess, like Aaron talked about earlier, servers are kind of this like outside connection. When we're trying to visit websites, and what we do is we reach out to these servers like at a distant location and kind of get the information that we want from them. So kind of how we've been getting our website, the Catbook that we've been working on so far, is just that we've had all of the files locally. So even though we have been kind of interacting with the Catbook server, all of the files that we've been using, our JS files, all the stuff that we've written, all our HTML, all that's been locally on our computer. And if you go into Chrome when we're opening up like Catbook and looking at like the HTML files, you can see kind of in the top where a URL normally is, that it actually just has the file path on your computer. So basically, we kind of have the front end of our website kind of stored as it is on our computer currently. How websites actually work is that these files don't start out on your computer. You don't have the files for every single website across all the internet on your computer currently. What you do is you go to a URL that's going to direct you to a server, and that server will actually send you back all of the files and all of the information that you need. It's going to send it to Chrome, and then Chrome will take those files and render it kind of like we've seen. So basically, like the difference between what we've kind of been doing and what we need to get to is that we need to, rather than just having all of the files that we're working with on our computer to start, we have to get connected to a backend server that's going to give us all the files, and it'll also do a lot of the stuff that we worked together today with Corey, where we'll be able to actually, after even we get those files, still contact the server and have this communication going back and forth. So what actually is a server? Because we keep mentioning a server, and maybe it might not be 100% clear what it is. But a server is just a regular computer. It's a computer somewhere else that's just running code. It's running code specifically to just listen and wait for someone to reach out to it and make a request. So what you do is when you make these HTTP requests, you're contacting, there's probably, if you go to Facebook.com, there's Facebook data centers that they just have computers running, waiting for people to make requests so that they can give them all of the pages that they've been working on. So what a server really needs to do is it needs to handle lots of different requests, because if you go to Facebook.com, you want multiple users interacting with the site at the same time. So it has to handle that and be able to send the files and the information that people need across to different browsers to different people at the same time. It needs to be able to give people different files. So maybe you go to Wikipedia.com and you want to get different pages. Maybe one person wants a page for cats, one person wants a page for dogs. You need to know that they're looking for different things and give them different stuff. This is kind of called routing. And then it also has to interact with databases. And this we'll talk about more tomorrow. But basically, the important takeaway is a database and a server are kind of two separate things. A database stores all of your information. A server is just running, waiting for requests, and it will actually contact the database for you, and that's how data is kind of communicated back and forth. So now we're going to kind of transition and talk about Node, because this is going to be very important for us to set up servers. So we've kind of been, basically, Node isn't anything super complicated. What it is a JavaScript runtime engine. So it's not any sort of JavaScript, it's not like a framework, a package, anything particular. It's really just meant to run JavaScript code. That's all it does, is it takes JavaScript code and runs it. That's all Node is. So it's not something particularly complicated. So what we can do is if we go into our terminal, we can type node, and if we just input node, it will put us into a command prompt thing like this, a console, and we can actually just type JavaScript code. So if I do console.log, hello, it's going to print out the hello for me. All it does is it's just running my JavaScript code for me. So I can x equals 5, and I might do x, and it's going to give me back 5. So basically, the only thing to know about Node is what it actually does is just run JavaScript code, nothing else. There's nothing particularly, it doesn't have, that's its entire purpose. Yeah, if we console.log hello world, we get undefined. The undefined there is basically what console.log is returning, but it will print out hello world if you just like, it would when you're running the JavaScript code that we've been doing in all of our other files. So kind of as a quick quiz, so Node is something that will let us run our JavaScript code. Where else can we kind of find something that will run our JavaScript code for us? Where else can we find a JavaScript runtime engine? And go. Where have we kind of seen it already? Yep, in the browser, in Chrome. So Chrome has its own runtime engine, and so what we've been doing when we've been, doing all these like manipulations with the DOM and stuff like that, all the JavaScript that we've been running, Chrome's been executing for that. So kind of before we go to that, the reason that Node will kind of be important for us and how it relates to servers is that, yes, the browser is what we've been using to run all of our front-end JavaScript, but to get our server up and running, we need something to actually run the JavaScript code we're going to be using for that, and that's what Node's for. So Node is going to be what we use to run our server code so that we can get our computer to listen and wait for requests to come through. So we're going to do a really small workshop. It's honestly not really a workshop. We're going to just go through together and actually kind of make a small server. So you can go to this link, and it will direct you to a Git repo that you can clone, and we'll like follow along. And we're going to kind of get to a point where we're using Node to get a small little server running for us. So give it a couple minutes to just get that set up. The repo isn't super exciting. It should have just one empty file inside it called app.js. Is there anyone who still hasn't cloned and downloaded the repo? We're all set? Alright, so I guess as a first quick exercise, what we're going to do is we're going to just add a print statement to that file that we had, our app.js. And so kind of like we did before when we opened Node and we opened the command prompt when we run that JavaScript, what we can use Node to do is actually just run a JavaScript file, and we'll run all of the code in that file for us. So what we're going to do is just add a print statement to console.log, and we're going to use Node to just run it really quickly. So we can do that. So we go into our app.js, we can just add console.log, and say, hello web, save, and we can go into the workshop, and we can do node app.js. And it will print out the statement, and it will finish and go back to our terminal where we can run other commands. But basically, again, Node's just running our JavaScript code for us. Okay? So why do we need Node? Again, like we kind of talked about, so how we've been running our JavaScript code before is that Chrome has been doing it for us. But when we kind of just want this server to be a piece of code that's just listening and waiting for requests, we don't need a full browser to do it. Chrome has lots of bells and whistles and stuff like that. We just want a good runtime engine that works for a server. So we kind of talked about some of the things that were important for servers, like being able to handle lots of requests, being able to handle lots of things happening at the same time. Node is a really good runtime engine to use because it is able to scale really well and handle a lot of requests. It can handle automatically handling requests that happen at the same time from different clients. And also it will sleep if it's not handling any requests, so that's another thing that makes it really valuable to use for your server as opposed to front-end code. Node is just one thing that you can use to build your backend. So you don't even have to do your backend in JavaScript. You can do it in a bunch of different languages. You can use a bunch of different frameworks, a lot of different things to run it. Node is just a good one to learn because we're already learning JavaScript, and it is one that is used in industry. Yeah, Node really good for running server code. And that's kind of, a lot of times you'll hear Node, and it's really connected to servers because how it's kind of built to do that. So really quickly, we're going to talk about kind of libraries in general. So when we're programming, all a library it's like a pre-built collection of code that someone else has written. And they're really important because a lot of times we're doing similar stuff where say I wanted to do, there's lots of times where maybe I want to do a lot of matrix stuff, like I want to multiply matrices a lot. It doesn't make sense that every single time I want to do that I write an entire thing for doing matrix operations. So it would be really nice that someone writes it really well once, and then I can just import it and use that. So the reason libraries are important is because a lot of times when we're building our server code and stuff, there are lots of libraries that can make writing server code easier, and so we're going to want to incorporate those. As you kind of said a bunch of times, there's always some tool that's going to make your life easier, and there are definitely lots of tools for making writing server code easier. So a package manager is something that you use to handle libraries, so you can use it to install, to update, remove, handle all that. If you've used Python, you might have used pip. Pip helps you handle all of your packages there. In JavaScript, we use NPM, or Node Package Manager. And so basically, this is going to help us get all of the libraries we need, so that when Node runs, it has all of the different libraries we want to use. What we're going to kind of do now is we're going to use the Node Package Manager to take our the server that we're trying to set up, and we're going to allow it to get the libraries that we actually need to build this server. So to do that, what we're going to want to do is make sure that we're in the repo. So if you're in Server Workshop and you type npm init, what it will do is it will basically create this file. It will walk you through, it will ask you a bunch of questions about the project. It's basically going to make a file for you called package.json. And what that file does is it gives you a bunch of description about your project, and it also says what libraries are important to use in this project. So when we type npm init, we get it's going to ask us a bunch of questions. So the first thing is what is the package name, which is basically what is the name of this project. So we're probably going to call it Capital. It asks for a version number. It's kind of arbitrary, so we'll just, the thing in parentheses is basically what the default value is, so if you don't put anything, it will take that. So if I just hit enter, it's going to take one, and give a description, so it's Facebook for cats. An entry point is what point you want this server code to actually be run on, what file you want to run, and so it's defaulting and looking and saying, hey, there's app.js, and yeah, that's the one we want to use. It asks a bunch of things like how are we going to run tests, we don't need to put that for now. Git repository, we don't need keywords. So a lot of this stuff is just descriptions about the project, so it's not super important for our purposes to kind of put it. And then basically it says it's about to write this giant this giant JSON object to package.json, and we're going to say yes. So I'll scroll up so you can see what I put. But basically, now we have this file, and actually if we go to our code, we're going to see that it just created this file, package.json, and if we go into it, it's going to have all of that stuff that we put, the answers to all those questions, and basically this is going to be like the description of our project, and it's going to hold it's going to help us handle all of these libraries. So npm is going to be like the kind of it's going to give us everything we need to actually run this project. So to kind of get this to build a web server, one library that we're going to want to use is HTTP. So we kind of talked about HTTP requests before with Aaron and Corey in the lectures workshop before. So HTTP is a library that's going to help us actually build our server and give us the stuff that's going to help us listen for requests. So we can go back to the terminal, and the command that we will write is npm install, which is going to basically get a library, and we give it the library that we want. So this is HTTP. And we designate that we want to save this. And so when we put this in, it's going to download what we need for that HTTP library. How this actually works is, I'm pretty sure, but npm has the keyword HTTP tells it to go and get the HTTP library. There's keywords for a bunch of different libraries. If there's a thing when you're building your projects that you think that you might want to use, maybe there's a library to help with this, maybe there's a library to help with that, you can Google it and you might find that it's easy to just npm install and there's a keyword already set for it. But what changed is if we go back to our code, we'll notice that there are a couple differences. Our package.json has this new dependencies part, and that's basically saying that for this project, we need HTTP and we need the version 0.00. The other thing that changed is we now have this new folder called Node Modules, and if we open it up, we'll see that we have HTTP. This is where all the code for that library is. And so basically, every time you download a library, the code that you need to actually use that library will be in here. Okay. So one important thing that we're going to talk about. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a... So basically, when we download this, we have all this code for these libraries. Some of them can be actually massive. When we're working with Git, right, a lot of times we're changing files, we're tracking these files, and we're pushing a lot of stuff up into their servers and then downloading it. What we don't want to do is we don't want to send all of the stuff for all of these libraries. It's very easy for NPM to just download the stuff onto your computer once, and then you don't need to worry about having all that stuff tracked. So what a git ignore file will do is it will tell Git that, hey, I don't want you to actually look and keep track of these files. Even though you keep track of everything else in the directory, don't keep track of this stuff. The reason we're going to put node modules is so that we don't keep these libraries. So we can do that now. If we go and create a new file, we can call it .gitignore, and we can add the node modules folder and save. And basically, this is going to say that anything in the node modules directory, don't push it to GitHub. And so basically, this means that now we're not going to push those libraries. But the thing that we have is that package.json that we looked at, that had the dependencies there for us that said, hey, you have the HTTP, you need the HTTP library. When you do npm install and don't put HTTP or don't put the library, it will look at package.json and basically say, hey, do I have all of the stuff here? If I don't, then let's go and get it. And so what you do is if you clone a repo, you won't get the libraries, but if you just npm install, it will look in the package.json for all of the stuff you need for that, for this project, and we'll go and get it. And so when you're working with teammates and stuff like that, if when you clone your repo originally, you want to run npm install so you get all of the libraries you're using, and anytime one of your teammates goes and adds a new library, you want to run npm install so that you get that stuff back into your folder. Okay. So now that we've done that, We have the HTTP library that we need, and so what we're going to do is we're going to edit the app.js file, and together we're going to write a small server. We're going to use the HTTP library to do it. So if we go to the code, we can go into app.js. We can delete the print statement that we put. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a variable called HTTP, and we're going to set it equal to this keyword require, and we'll pass the string HTTP. If you've coded in Python or Java, you might have seen import statements before. This is an import statement. It's basically importing the HTTP library and saving it under the name HTTP. So this will let us use all the stuff from the library we downloaded. What we're going to do is we're going to create another variable, and we're going to call it server. And this will be equal to HTTP create server. And what this takes is it takes a callback function with two arguments, request and response. And in this, what we're going to do is we're going to do res and hello. You can type any message you want. I'm going to say hello from Zach. Basically, what this is doing is it's using a function in the HTTP library called create server. It's creating a server, and what that server, the function we pass in is what does the server do when it gets a request. And basically the two arguments is a request thing, which is basically, if you remember, we were doing our HTTP request, like that's the request it's getting, and then the res is the response that it's sending back. When we type this res end, it's basically saying, I want you to send back this message, so we're going to send back hello from Zach. And the reason it's called end is I think it's signaling that it's like the end of the communication for this connection. We're going to create another variable. It's going to be called port. What a port is a port is just a point on your computer that is listening from. It's an endpoint on your computer. So your computer can be doing a bunch of communication from different endpoints, and this is just the number that it is. 3000 is arbitrary, so we could have picked, usually we pick like a 4-digit number, but here we're going to use 3000. And the last thing that we do is we use server.listen. We pass in the port, and then we pass in another callback function. And what this one does is this is going to be the function that we do when our server is started up. So we're just going to print out console.log. The server is listening on the port, and we'll add the port that we just put. So this code, in general, it's not super important to really have it memorized. It's kind of, you just want to know what each thing is doing. It's kind of stuff that once you write once, you have your server set up, so you're not really touching it again. It's not stuff that you're going to do a bunch of times when you're doing your project. It's kind of boilerplate to kind of plug in, but you want to just know what each of the things are doing because it can help you figure out how your server is actually working, especially when you go to do more complicated stuff. But this is how we're going to start. So what we can do is if we go back to the terminal, we can use Node again to run our JavaScript, and we'll run our app.js, and we get that message that we got that we said that we're going to print out when our server started. So our server started and we're listening on port 3000. So basically, this means that now my computer is listening for requests on its port 3000 to basically do the function that we implemented to send back hello for me. If we go to our browser, so I'm going to get out of this. If we go to our browser, you can go to localhost. This is kind of small. Yeah, it's not making that bigger. So, but you go to localhost :3000. We're gonna type it in. Right in. So. Okay. And this is : If you go to that, you're going to get the message that you typed. And basically, what you did is you used your browser to connect to the part of your computer that is like broadcasting and waiting for requests. All right. So in the slides, I have kind of the explanations that I gave about each part of the code. But we don't need to like, so if you want to go back and look at it, it's there. One thing to note is that you don't necessarily, I guess I'll talk about what localhost actually is. Localhost is just saying I want to connect to my own computer. That's all that localhost is. So you're connecting to your own computer at port 3000, and that's how you're seeing the message from your server. But the thing is you don't necessarily have to just be on your own computer. So what you can do is if you go to weblab.to/Zach, what this should do is it should connect you to my computer, and you should get back the message that I put. Because basically, what you're doing is you're connecting to the port that I put, and my computer is handling the request that you gave me and giving me back that response. So this kind of shows that, yeah, like a server really is just a computer. The thing that's going to be handling and giving and doing all our backend stuff is just a computer somewhere. If you look in, so if we go back here, and so if we do that weblab.to/Zach, and we get this, you'll see these numbers at the top. Those numbers are just like the address for my computer. So basically, that's how it does that connection. It goes to that address, and then the Homeland 3000 again is just that port. Okay. So basically, we just finished a small server. It is we did a backend. It's not really the backend that we are going to need. It's very small. It's only sending us back this message. What we want to do at some point is, give back all of the stuff that we've been working on. Give back our HTML. Give back our the CSS. All of that stuff. What we're going to want to do is also, handle like the requests that we did earlier. We're going to want to, handle routing. So maybe I want to go to the profile page or the home page. The server has to be able to know to give back the right stuff for that. That's all stuff that we're going to need. So basically, as you can see, like we only typed a little bit of code, but we only got a little bit out of it. What we're going to do tomorrow is we're going to talk about Express. And Express is basically a way that we can kind of do all that stuff a little bit more easier. Like if we were going to write to handle all the files, it would be a little bit more complicated, but Express is going to make that easy for us. So tomorrow, we're going to use Express to basically handle that routing. We're going to use it to actually give back the files that we've been doing for Catbook. So then you could just visit that link on your computer, visit that link to the server to get back all the stuff that we've been working on. And we'll also do stuff with databases, and we're going to finish out all of the API routes that we had done. And so that's it. So if you want the final code that we did a little bit for that server, you can just check out the completed branch. It's also in the slides. And I think that's it. I don't know if you